Welcome back to another installment of Why Shane Hates Cars. I don't really hate cars. I just find a lot of humor in diagnosing them, and especially in the OBD2 systems. So today at work, I had a Chevy truck. I think it was like an 04, 05. Not an LS, it's the LM7 or whatever the heck that is, the iron block nonsense. V8. Check engine light. P0455. EVAP system large leak. Okay, now if you're a mechanic, auto technician, we're special. Okay, I'm one of you. I know how it works. Then you'll probably already know where this is going, but stick around. It's kind of funny. At least I find it funny. At least the irony in it. Now back to the story. P0455 EVAP system large leak. What is EVAP? Why is it leaking? And I don't see any fluid dripping on the floor. What is this? You don't make any sense, but let's figure it out. So EVAP, or evaporative emissions. What's that? The fuel tank in your car, right? You put the gas in the gas tank and off you go. Well, fuel, just like anything else, expands and contracts with heat or temperature change, really. I mean, have you ever put your gas can out on the front porch and come back a couple hours later and it's this big when it was this big when you started? You know exactly what happened. You're gonna pull the cap off and it's gonna go poosh. All that pressure is gonna escape. That's evaporative emissions. It's the fuel vapors that evaporate from the fuel with heat. So this in a fuel tank in a car is dangerous. But the EPA had to step in, of course, and regulate where this emissions go, because if the fuel vapors just go off up into space, or the air we breathe, it's harmful, I guess. It's also probably a little dangerous, but I don't know about that. It's more so just emissions because it's emissions. Anyhow, we got to deal with it. Now, the EVAP systems, they're a fairly simple system. You got a fuel tank, a fuel cap, a charcoal canister, a vent valve, a purge valve, and a whole plethora of plastic and rubber lines tying all these components together. Pretty simple, right? What could go wrong? Now, most if not all manufacturers on OBD2 systems are required to check the system for leaks. I mean, that's the whole point of having emissions is no leaks, and what's stopping people from doing that? So we have to be able to kick a check engine light so when they go for inspection, it gets failed and it gets fixed. What they'll do is the ECU, every manufacturer doesn't know how they do it, but for the most part it's the same. They will operate the purge valve, which is mounted in the intake manifold or on the intake manifold. They'll operate that to pull a vacuum on the system. They'll close the vent valve, and at that point everything else is sealed off. You got the gas cap on the fuel tank, everything else is sealed. So they'll operate the purge valve, which will pull a vacuum on the entire system. And there's a certain allowable leak, you have small leaks and large leaks, and there's a certain allowable amount because there is a bunch of other stuff I'm not going to get into, but that's how they monitor it. And you have a fuel tank pressure sensor, of course, mounted in the fuel tank, which measures the pressure in the system. So when the ECU kicks on that purge valve, it should see the value for the fuel tank pressure drop, especially if the charcoal canister vent valve is closed. And that's how they're monitoring the system for any broken lines, broken canister, the vent valve stuck open, the gas cap's off, because we can't have the gas cap loose. I mean, that would allow the evaporative emissions to escape. So through the code, P0455, large leak, because the ECU had commanded on the purge valve and it had not seen that fuel tank pressure sensor value go down. That'd be a vacuum. If that pressure sensor went up, that would be essentially a boost, right? But you're never gonna see that. Unless, of course, everything was sealed off and the pressures in the tank rose because of heat. Then you might see a positive value, but we generally don't see positive values. So it saw that and it says, hey, you got a giant leak somewhere, dummy. Like, something's wrong here. Well, here's the kicker. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was broken. There was no leaks in the system. The purge valve was broken. It was being commanded on, but nothing was happening. Therefore, no vacuum on the system. The ECU saw it, put out a signal to operate the purge valve, but that fuel tank pressure sensor did not show a value of going down. It just stayed the same because there was no vacuum on the system. I find it funny because why can't you just tell me the purge valve isn't working? You just gotta tell me, oh, it's got a big leak somewhere. If you're new, like, how many people have wasted hours trying to find leaks, smoking the system and checking everything for it says there's a leak. Where's the leak? I don't find the leak. There never was a leak. There never was any vacuum. You never had me. You never had your car.